Hello, and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great. How about you, Eric?
Doing all right.
Can't believe January is winding down already. For
I
me,
know.
hasn't been that bad. It got a little bit of snowflakes falling out there, but it's about 35 degrees, so they're not sticking to anything except maybe some tree limbs or something in my grill. So,
Well, there's been snow and storms around the country, and there's a possibility that we are going to get hit with a massive storm over the weekend. So winter is not quite giving up yet.
oh, no. But we're getting closer. So,
We are. And to be fair, last couple of years, we've had fairly mild winters until February. And then February, all hell breaks loose.
yep. Now it gets us back, but we're lucky this January because we have had a lot of rain. And if that rain had been snow, we would have a whole lot of stuff out there. So,
Oh, yes.
but I feel bad for the skiers. So if it snows, more power to them.
All right. So this week, we are going to talk about productivity. And it's actually a topic that comes up in the news fairly often. And we've seen one of the economic indicators, the productivity index, has been dropping. People are getting less productive. And it's one thing if you're working 9 to 5 and you've got specific jobs you have to get done and you can get them done. But if you're looking for a little more than that, if you own your business, if you're a freelancer, if you're a gig worker, productivity is everything to you because that determines how much money you can make, how much work you can get done. So, we're going to talk about some of the ways you can boost your productivity.
Yeah, and obviously being organized and really sticking to your plan is really, really important. It's really, really important to just lay out exactly what you need to do, prioritize things. Obviously, it's changed over the last couple of years with the COVID effect. So a lot of people who were once working in the office are now working at home. There's a lot of new businesses out there and so on. But the principles as far as organization and productivity are still there. And it's basically getting yourself organized, putting everything down on paper or in a planner or whatever. And I definitely want you to talk about your system because it's very, very productive for people. And then sticking to it, monitoring yourself, and then celebrating when you accomplish things. But one of the best things you can do is plan your goals. However, you have to chunk them down if they're complicated into simple tasks and then hit them one by one so you're not overwhelmed up front. So that's tip number one.
Absolutely. You need to make sure that things are as simple as possible if you really want to be productive. You don't want to waste time figuring out how to do something or looking at your to do list and going, okay, well, what's the first step in that? Break it down so that those steps are obvious. And you need to prioritize. Everybody talks about time management, but the fact of the matter is, everybody's got the same 24 hours in a day. You're not managing time, you're managing your priorities and when you can get things done. And there is a book, The 12-Week Year, which I'm a big fan of. And one of the things that it talks about is creating blocks of time. And they categorize these into three different types of blocks. Block one is a strategic block, and a strategic block is about 3 hours long, and that is reserved for what they call deep work. That's when you are plowing through your projects. And it's a 3 hour block of time where you're not checking your phone, you're not checking email, you're not letting people interrupt you, you're just focused on the work you need to be done. Now, the second type of block they recommend is called a buffer block. And this is the time dedicated to all those interruptions that come through. You can schedule a couple of these during the day. You can make them 15 minutes, half an hour, even an hour. But these are the blocks that you reserve for email, phone calls. If somebody says they need to have a quick meeting with you, these buffer blocks are where you put those so that they don't get in the way of your strategic blocks. And then finally, they talk about a breakout block. And a breakout block is another 3 hour block, but it happens a lot less. It can be just once a week. And a breakout block is actually when you're not doing work. You're shifting away from everything that has to be done to give your brain a rest. One of the biggest productivity hacks is the realization that you don't have to be productive 24/7. You need time to rest and relax, to shift your focus to other things so that when you get back to work, your mind is ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. It also recommends having little breakouts during the day, taking a 5-10 minute break a few times during
Yep.
the day to increase your productivity, especially if you're doing those 3 hour blocks, because obviously you need some time to recharge on a daily basis too. But when it comes to actually accomplishing what you have to accomplish, you have to have your clear set of goals and what your tasks are there, and then lay out things based upon, and this is right out of Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy or all other time management tools, but the 80-20 rule, as far as 80% of your positive results are going to come from 20% of your activity. Things like prioritizing. Brian Tracy recommends using the ABCDE method or quadrants method, where you look at urgent and important, urgent but not important, important but not urgent, and not urgent and not important. And that toughest one to manage is not urgent but important, because that's the one that you tend to procrastinate on. And if you procrastinate on that quadrant, eventually it becomes urgent and important. And I think that's one of my biggest drawbacks, is messing up with that stuff, and all of a sudden, wow, I got a presentation to do tomorrow, that kind of thing. But it's really, really important to do that. Again, put this all down on paper. If you have a schedule on your phone or whatever, that's great. I still use my spreadsheet where I have the time blocks right there, down there in front of me, so I can do that. But prioritize what's important. And again, single task by single task to accomplish your ultimate goal, and track your how you're doing there. And that's a big key to it. So
Absolutely. And, I'm a big fan of that quadrant method. What I find that most people stumble on is defining which of their activities are urgent and which are important, and understanding the difference. Urgent is putting out fires. Urgent is something, it's got to be done right now, but that doesn't mean that it's going to get you closer to your goal. It might not get you closer to completing your project, but it's something that's got to be done. Those are the things that should be handled in those buffer blocks, taking care of those, getting them out of the way. Important is goal oriented, is project oriented. If it's important, it's going to move you forward. And the question that people need to ask themselves when they're looking at something that's important or urgent is, what are the consequences of that not being done? If the consequences are major, that's important. If the consequences are minor, it could just be urgent. And you do need to understand the difference when you're scheduling things.
yeah, and actually, one of Brian Tracy's neatest 21 principles in Eat That Frog is practicing creative procrastination. And these are the things that you really don't need to do. And these are the things that you can put off. A lot of us procrastinate doing something big. And if you can prioritize that, you can't do everything. So if you deliberately put off the tasks that are low value, so you have enough time to do the important stuff, that's really what you need to do.
Absolutely. Low value is what you can wait till tomorrow. But even high value, if you break it down into simpler steps, you don't need to do it all at once. And that's where most people hit analysis paralysis, or they'll start procrastinating because it becomes overwhelming. They're looking at a project as a whole and going, oh my God, that's going to be huge. I can't deal with that right now. Let me put that off. When you break it down, I have on my to do list right now several very large projects, but each of them is broken down into about 7 smaller steps. So today, I'm doing step 1 in each of them. Tomorrow, I'll do step 2 in each of them. And they'll all get done. They'll get done way before the deadlines, but they're not overwhelming because I'm not looking at it as this massive chunk of time I have to spend. And I think,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, continue on, because my thought's different here.
And I think something that's important for people to realize is that they need to understand the way they work. Chip mentioned the Biznetics planner that we have as part of our program. And I think one of the most important things we have in that planner is that when you're writing out your schedule and keeping track of everything you do during the day, there are 2 icons. One's a circle, one's a lightning bolt. The lightning bolt is meant to track your energy. If you're energized, fill in that lightning bolt. If it's an average time, fill in half. If you're sluggish, if you're slow, leave it blank. The reason for this is that over time, you will be able to see patterns and you'll know when you're at peak energy. And, Chip has mentioned Eat That Frog a couple times already. And the concept behind Eat That Frog is to get the hardest thing done first so the rest of your day is done easily. When you know when you're at peak energy, we recommend that that's when you should be doing the hardest and most important work, when you're at that peak energy. This way it's not such a slog to get through it, but you're not going to know when to schedule it unless you know how you work.
Yeah, and it's great that you can track that. Obviously, you hit on a very, very major point there, especially for those of us who are working our own businesses and so on and so forth, and are not in the office for an 8 to 5 day or something like that. And that is identifying when you're most productive. I mean, I think you're more of an evening person. I'm more of a morning person, and but that's just the way the things are. The other things is too, if you're working with other people in a business, obviously, or if you're working by yourself, you have to set your own boundaries. And if you're working with other people, delegate out what you don't need to do and what other people should be doing. That should be well defined. And you shouldn't be the one that says, I'm going to do everything for everybody there, because it just makes everybody inefficient. And then for yourself, if you're looking at something that you're looking to do and it's not your cup of tea, it's a great opportunity for you to develop through networking strategic partnerships with other people who can handle that with you. So even though you're all entrepreneurs working for yourself, if you have a team of people that you can look to help out with different facets of the project or what you're doing, it makes it more efficient for everybody. And in these days where a lot of people are just working out of their homes and a lot of people are working for themselves now, it's so important to take a look at things that way instead of saying, how am I going to get this done? Find somebody who can, start developing the relationship with them. And obviously, people are going to be looking to you to do the same thing. And then we will be looking at doing things where we are most productive, things that we're doing the best, things that we like to do, which is a huge, huge part of it. Because obviously, what you want to do is be happy doing what you're doing instead of just doing it.
Absolutely. Nobody is good at everything. You shouldn't try to be. Find people to complement your strengths and weaknesses. And the example I always give, because so many people say, oh, I can't afford to hire somebody, is an accountant. Because an accountant, they're good at what they do. And what's taking you 3 or 4 hours to do because you're not an accountant and you're slogging through QuickBooks or whatever can take them an hour, which frees up your time to do other things, including building sales and building your business. So when you look at it, you're not, your time is valuable. You have to put a value on that and look at it and go, oh, okay, yeah, it's going to cost me a lot less to have them do this for an hour than it would for me to spend 4 or 5 hours trying to accomplish it. And with the gig economy, more and more of these tasks can be outsourced. There are websites like Fiverr where you can find freelancers. And a lot of these freelancers, they're located around the world. You can have a social media schedule put together. You can have blog posts done for you, and it can cost as little as $5. It can cost $25. And these same people who are really good at these little projects are also available for larger projects for obviously larger amounts of money. But you can bring in their expertise, and you're not hiring. This is just a freelancer that you're having them do one project and that's it. If they're really good at it, you can hire them again, but you're not dealing with payroll and benefits and all of this. It's a one and done process. So you don't have to do everything. Even if you're a solopreneur, you can find people to delegate to.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people are out there, and I'm talking about really top business owners and so on and so forth, and their main focus is cutting costs. They figure if they cut costs, they're going to make more money. And cutting costs means not outsourcing things. But you and I are both consultants, and I know that you've dealt with a lot of businesses. There's certain things you mentioned: accounting, it's group insurance, payroll, things like that. These are things that there are specialists out there where if you don't have to deal with those headaches, if you had a couple extra hours a day to improve the top line of your business by doing what you do best, what are the ramifications of that going to be versus burning yourself out mentally and saving a few bucks by not doing that? I always like to think about top line budgeting rather than bottom line budgeting as far as cutting costs. So it's really, really important to take a look at that. And a great thing that you can do, I mean, you have the ability to do this in your Biznetics model, but you can even just do this on a spreadsheet, is just take out a spreadsheet or use Eric's tool and write down what you're doing task by task in there. At the end of the day, at the end of the week, and whatever, total up the hours that you spent doing this, and this. Then take a look at that ABCD method as far as priorities about how important that they are, and see where you wasted the time, and think to yourself, what would happen if I shifted that time doing this to this productive time? What would the top line ramifications be? What would my own psyche be for that as far as my own sanity by not having to worry about those problems? It's really, really important to do that. And if you track yourself, it's right there in front of you. You're writing your own book, you're writing your own story, and it's going to be crystal clear as far as where you need work.
Absolutely. And again, we're talking about productivity. So when you're looking at cutting costs, higher productivity results in lower costs. So that this is where you can be saving money, not by pinching every penny, but getting the most out of what you're doing. And knowing what, Chip just mentioned tracking what you're doing. When I mentioned the daily planner earlier, I said there were two icons, one of which was the lightning bolt. That second icon is a circle. And what that's for is for tracking what you're doing against your goals. So if something is absolutely goal oriented, you fill it in. If it's administrative, like billing or something that has to be done, but not necessarily tied to your goal, fill in half the circle. If it's something that's not related to your goal at all, leave the circle blank and you will see how much time you waste. Everybody always thinks, oh, I can't possibly fit something else into my day. But I was told this story not too long ago, and I think it's absolutely on point. A very busy executive woman, one of these folks that said, every moment of my day is packed. I don't have enough time. I can't deal with anything else. She wakes up one morning and there's water in the living room. She goes to her boiler and she finds the boiler has broken down and there's water everywhere. Well, she has to call a repair person. She has to call a company to clean out all of the water. Well, all of this takes her 7 hours to get everything back to normal. Now, 24 hours earlier, if you'd asked her, well, do you have 7 hours to spend on something that's not related to, your work? No, there's no way I can find 7 hours. But when the crisis hit, she found those 7 hours. You can always find the time. And sometimes it's things you don't even realize. Last year, I made a New Year's resolution that I was going to listen to 100 audiobooks. And I did that through the course of the year. And I realized, because the time that I was listening to those books had to come from somewhere, how much time I was wasting staring at the television, not even paying attention, staring at a social media feed, not really paying attention to what I was looking at. And instead, I made that time productive. And it wasn't all, I did a lot of business books, a lot of self improvement books, but I also included novels because that gave me time to relax. So it was still productive. I was still getting towards my goal, but I was also taking steps to avoid burnout, which is also important. So when you pay attention to your time and what your priorities are, you'll find you can fit in a lot more than you ever imagined.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned strategic blocks and buffer blocks and so on and so forth. It's really, really important to get yourself into positive routines. And we've talked about this a lot, but starting each day with a positive morning routine just to set your mind straight is really, really important. And that does not include turning on all the media and all that other kind of thing. It could include exercise. It could include reading, like you're talking about, or listening to a book, or a lot of other things. But if you expose yourself to positive morning things, a gratitude journal is a great way to start the day. That helps set the tone for a positive mindset, which is really what you need to get through the day every single day. If you can start every day with a positive mindset, just starting tomorrow, quick routine, read something positive for 10 minutes in the morning. That will actually help you feel a whole lot more empowered during the day, a lot less tired, and a lot more motivated to do things just because you have your priorities straight. So that's one of the most important things you can possibly do. Start the day with something positive, end the day going over your accomplishments and looking forward to tomorrow as opposed to worrying about what's going to be going on, because however you fall asleep, whatever you're thinking about, that's what you're marinating for the whole night. So if you start and end the day with positive things, that's going to help your stamina a whole lot.
Absolutely. And a lot of people focus on a morning routine. I mean, my morning routine is very simple. It's get up, shave, jump in the shower, grab breakfast, get to my desk. That's my morning routine. All of the things that people talk about, meditation, exercise, reading, that's my evening routine because I'm a night person. So when you know how you work, you schedule your routine so that it works with you. When I finish my evening routine, I'm ready to sleep. My mind is now relaxed. I know there's nothing left that I have to do that day, and I'm ready when I wake up the next morning to hit the ground running and face the day. So figure out how you work and build those routines around you. And also, you don't have to block out large amounts of time for routine. As Chip said, you can read for 5 minutes in the morning, a couple of pages. That only takes a few minutes to get some exercise in. You don't need to schedule 3 hours in a day to go to a gym and do something. You can, you know, while you're working at your desk, get some movement exercises in. There are some great exercise routines that are actually meant to be done in a desk chair. Spread it out during the day before you go to lunch. Drop to the floor, do a couple of push ups, stretch yourself out. If you're going shopping, if you're driving to your office, park at the far end of the parking lot and walk to your office or the supermarket. It's little things that only take a few minutes, but they build your productivity. They help you mind, body, and soul. And that's when you're most productive, when all three of those are operating at peak performance.
Yeah, believe me, you'll be happy with yourself by doing that. I know we discussed the book, The Miracle Morning, probably a couple of years ago, and I picked up just a couple of things out of that morning thing. But I've always done a little bit of reading and other development work in the morning. But what I incorporated into that, number one, first thing I do every morning is drink a big glass of water, and then what I do is 10 minutes of exercise. And for me, it's just basically push-ups, and then squats, and then curls, and then lunges with 10-pound weights in my hands, and then more push-ups. Takes me about 10 minutes. And after that, I'm wide awake and ready to go. And I've been doing that for probably the last 3 or 4 years. And I've been doing a lot more walking also. But it's just a great way to start that. If you have that behind you saying, I've accomplished that, when before that, I was just getting up in the morning, cup of coffee, going to the computer, doing this and that, whatever. That was a life changer there, just getting into something like that. But if you just figure out your own thing, but there's certain things you can do in the morning to get yourself psyched up for the day, motivated, physically ready to go just by doing a little bit of exercise. And so pick it out, plan it, and just do it. And as you're saying, it does not have to be a long thing. It's just a way to do that, especially if that's replacing getting up and listening to the news and looking at media and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And the big mistake you were making that you just said is you got up and you did this or that. When you're doing that, you're stuck trying to figure out, well, what should I do? When I get to my desk, I turn on my computer, my to-do list pops up. I've got everything right there. I take a look. Okay, these are the priorities. Bang, move on. It's getting yourself organized and getting yourself motivated. And that's something, we're almost at the end of our time, but it's a very important thing to talk about, is ownership. These are things, it's not just about being accountable for getting things done. You have to own your tasks. These are things that you need to be motivated and take responsibility for doing them. It's like, yes, if this doesn't get done, then XYZ isn't going to happen. I need to take care of it. And understand that everything on your to-do list, there's a reason for getting it done. And that reason has to be important to you. It has to motivate you. And it's all about keeping yourself moving forward. People are like sharks. They have to keep moving forward to survive. So make sure you're moving forward. And we are just about out of our time. So, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway from today?
Well, I'm going back to what I preach every day when I do my commercials and whatever, and that's the 4 Ps. Whatever you're doing, find out what your purpose is. Make sure you have a passion for doing what you're doing, have a positive outlook for that, and put together your plan for getting that done, both personally and for your business. So purpose, passion, positivity, and a plan. And that will work out for you. Part of your plan is the different things that we talked about today as far as productivity tips.
Absolutely. I think for me, the big takeaway is that it's not about time, it's about prioritization. Get done what's important. Get done what you're motivated to get done. And you'll find the more you do, the more you'll want to do. And that builds your productivity. And productivity is a basic building block for everything we do. It saves us time, it saves us money, and it helps us accomplish our goals more efficiently. That's what productivity is really all about. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch every episode at xvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.